inspiring you to rise to the next level. This is a business story podcast. Join us as we invite influential entrepreneurs and organization leaders to share how they overcame adversities to pursue their purpose. Here's your host, Allysia Richardson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Business Story. Today, in this episode, we talk with a passionate author who shares one of the biggest secrets to having a successful business. Before we get started, I do want to invite other business owners and organization leaders to share their story on our podcast. In order to do that, go to our website, www.arideafactory.com, and go to our podcast page and send us your information. We will be delighted to highlight your business and share your story on our podcast. Without further ado, I introduce to you DeLisa Treshelle, national best-selling author.
Okay, so what got you into writing in the first place?
I have been a writer since junior high, but I did not know I was a writer. Of course, back then I just used to journal. Anything I was feeling at the time, I would just journal it. And so over the years, I just all of these thoughts written down in journals. And it really took me a long time to find my path as far as a career in writing. So I used to look up to all of these different urban authors back in the day. Like, that's what I was into. And then after my urban phase, I started just venturing out and just reading all different types of books. And so I fell in love with romance first. And I became a lover of Nora Roberts. She's like one of the, oh my God, when it comes to romance, like she's one of those people. Like she, I don't know if you know the book, the movie The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. So she's like the female version of him. So she's like the only other author that has like all of these movies, done based on the books and stuff like that. So I just fell in love with her and her writing, and I knew I wanted to write, but I still didn't really know that this was going to be like a career. So actually, when we was in the military, I started a book on deployment. I had no book writing experience, but I guess because I read so much, it just came natural. So I wrote this full-blown novel like while I was on deployment. And like I said, no extra experience or anything, but I did started writing in junior high, and that would just be anything I was feeling at the time, whatever was going on at home, just my feelings of being a teenage girl and stuff like that. I would write all of that down, but I still didn't know I wanted to be a writer. So I would read all these books and stuff like that. And then something in me was just like, I want to be like that one day. Like, I want to be able to write, these heartfelt books that eventually get turned into movies and things like that. But at the time, I was still taking computer science in college. So I still had not changed, like, my courses or whatever. And so how I got started, I was talking to one of my close friends one day. And I was just talking about something about a book, because I'm always talking about books and stuff like that. And at the time, like I said, I was in school for computer science, and she was like, she had mentioned to me, why don't I do English? And so I still had not fully changed my degree. But what happened was I ended up having a thought to go ahead and switch to English. So I switched my degree to English. But at the time I was at a community college, so they didn't have like English directly, but they had humanities and liberal arts, but a lot of the courses were English. So literally, as soon as I switched from computer science and I got into class, this professor, who I later found out was like this New York bedtime selling author, but he was a professor, So a lot of people at the school didn't know, like, this dude was like a big deal. And I ended up taking an English class of his. And at the end of the English class, he was asking who wanted to be in the writing club. And so I was like, yeah, I want to be in the writing club. And so we ended up having a meeting, and he was like, he needed a president for the writing club. So long story short, he said he just picked me. He said, I'm just going to pick you because I just feel like you should be the president. And so I became the president of the writing club. And all of this was in my transition to liberal arts and, like, taking all these English courses and learning about all of this technical writing and stuff like that. And so everything honestly just started to merge together. Like I ended up switching my degrees like 2 times. Because at first it was industrial engineering, then it was computer science. And so when I finally got to English, it's like everything started to click. So every time I would talk to somebody, they'd be like, okay, Lisa, you love books and writing, like English being your thing, like that make so much sense. And so everything just started coming together. And I ended up being the president of the writing club, and I actually ended up being in a book in college that focused on racism and just all of these just hard topics and stuff. And so we wrote narratives, and this book became like a national best-selling book. We got, even now, there has been a lot of celebrities on board. They end up turning the book into a play. Like so much happened from that book. Yeah, it was insane. And so from that, I ended up talking to a coach one day, and he was just listening to me talk. And I guess he picks out, you know, what he feels like God is leading him to tell you that you should do. And so at the time, even though I was in the book and stuff like that, and even though I was taking English, it still hadn't clicked that this is the actual writing career. Even though deep down I had these dreams of just being a big time author or whatever, like it just still didn't register. And so when I was talking to him, he was like, you should be a book coach. And I was like, huh? And so once again, everything just started aligning and making sense. And so from there, I went from the book I was in college, and then I ended up working on the Cover Through Christ book. Then I kind of got pulled back, and God wanted me to work on something that was dealing with my dad and my relationship with my dad. God started dealing with me and just letting me know that I couldn't move forward until I dealt with my past pretty much. And so Rekindled Hidden Treasures, it sparked from basically a process that I had to go through of forgiving my biological father. And just having to go back and address all of these issues, address all of these questions that I had towards him, address all of the hatred and anger and just unforgiveness that I had towards him pretty much all my life, even though I didn't know that that's what it was. And so this entire book was birthed from me forgiving him. And I was able to go back and look at some poems that he had previously sent me while he was in jail that he wanted me to publish for him. But when God started dealing with me, he told me, you know, you've been writing poems on your blog. So he wanted me to basically do a book introducing the story between me and my father, and just how I even started the process of forgiving him. How was that process for me? What were some of the things that I had to address? And so in the end, I ended up having this book basically as a testament to how God moved in that relationship with my dad.
That is good. Okay, so I got 2 questions, but the first question I want to ask you is, why do you think forgiveness why do you think God makes us forgive before moving forward? Like, why is that such a big deal? Why do you think that is?
Well, because here's the thing. Because it's like, when you listen, when God involved, he's not gonna let you do nothing halfway. Like that's the main thing. He's not about to let you do nothing halfway. So it's like I was constantly trying to move forward without dealing with all of the weight and all of the baggage that I was carrying. It was like I was on these book tours and I was in these rooms and I was smiling and I was appearing to be just the brightest bulb in the room and just so happy and such a light. But I had not addressed or dealt with any of these things, any of this childhood trauma. I had not dealt with it. Excuse me. So it was like, before he can allow me to move forward, and I guess because even working with my clients, they may be dealing with some things. So it's like, how can I coach them? Their holdup may be forgiveness. So it's like, how can I coach them through forgiveness when I haven't even forgiven?
Got you.
So, and it's really, really important because I did not realize how much it was holding me back. I thought I was moving forward, but I wasn't. So it's like, when I actually had to deal with that stuff, that's when I realized, like, hey, I wasn't even, pretty much I was going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
No.
I know that feeling. Okay.
Yeah, so.
So my next question is for the why. So now, why is that important to add into your actual process when coaching your clients?
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important because, and it's not just about forgiving other people either. A lot of the process is forgiving yourself. And so I found when I was writing, I was constantly trying to move forward. But so many decisions that I made that I feel like were triggered from my childhood stories with my dad. I just had so many thoughts towards myself where I felt like I was just so down on myself. I borderline hated myself for the decisions that I made. So it was like I had to forgive myself, and I couldn't sit down and write in the same thing. I couldn't sit down and inspire somebody else to be whole or to heal and work through this and work through that if I know that I hadn't really done that. So it was like, it was really addressing self. And so with my clients, it's really getting them to understand that you have to address yourself before you address your audience.
That is so good. Wow. So a lot of people, whenever they're going through this healing process, the focus is not on the father. The focus is on the mother, the forgiveness, everything that in order to move forward, that person has to go back to the mother aspect because they typically don't blame the father for much of anything. And so your story is just a little bit different to where your focus was on your mother. Your father.
Right. Yeah, and so I did, like I was telling you, I had to address some of those issues towards my mom as well, but everything always went back to my dad. Like it doesn't matter how it started, who I had in my mind at first, it always went back to my dad. Because I so much wanted, I just had these dreams just as a little girl of just wanting like that father figure around. Like I say, just having dreams of, or just fantasies of being able to go to father-daughter dances and just all of the lessons that I felt like was supposed to be taught to me throughout the years of me growing up and just not really knowing what to do, not really knowing how to be a woman, even though, you know, some of those things were taught from my mom. I just feel like the father's role is so important. It's so important. You know, we love our moms, but the dad's role in the household is just extreme for the daughter and the son, not just for the son. And so I felt like I just was missing that growing up, not really knowing what direction to take when it came to things in general, as to how to be, you know, a young lady, and also how to deal with men. I never really knew how to deal with it, even when it came to losing my virginity and things that were, you know, much more in depth. You know, how do I deal with these things? I didn't know how to tell the difference between, you know, a guy just saying that he loved me, you know, but he's just wanting sex and stuff like that. I didn't know any of this stuff because I didn't have my dad around.
Wow. And I definitely, I have to relate, because that conversation, first of all, from me growing up, not having that conversation with neither my mother or my father, and then to today, how it affects me and how my relationship is with my son. And I think my son will probably think that I'm not necessarily overbearing, but he will probably say, Mom, you're doing too much, because it's almost like, because I didn't have that, I'm overcompensating in the relationship with my son now. With writing, were there any roadblocks with writing this book?
You said, were there any role models?
Roadblocks.
Oh, Roblox. Oh my God. Yes. Listen. Oh my God. Where do I even begin? First and foremost, how this book came about, period, is just insane. This was never a book. I'm telling you, this was never a book. Wow. This whole process started from the first time I sat down and wrote my dad back a letter after he had been writing me since I was a kid. Like I was saying, like my dad, he's an artist, So he used to draw me pictures of Tweety Bird and all of the characters that I said about like even as a little girl, and he would write letters and stuff like that. And half of the time I would just throw this stuff to the side because I didn't really want to acknowledge him, period. I just didn't want to acknowledge him. And so even though he would be showing his love through letters and saying, I wish daddy could be there and stuff like that, I just never really paid attention to it. And so when I sat down and started the process of writing him back, I barely could get through even writing him a letter back. The whole time I was just breaking down. Like the whole time I was just crying. I would never forget. This was last year, maybe like February of 2000. I didn't really know, what I was doing, but I just started the process of releasing whatever I was feeling. And I just wrote him a letter back. And like I say, once that process was finished, I was just crying and praying and asking God to give me the words. And, because I didn't really know what to say. Like I was telling you, any other time that I had seen my dad, it was like a surface relationship. He would baby girl this and baby girl that, and I would give him hugs and stuff like that. We would have our conversations, but it never was in depth. We never talked about what I had felt towards him all of those years, the fact that I was angry at him and hurt. We never talked about none of that stuff. And so I was able to release that through the letter. And then after the process, after I actually forgave him, the minute that I felt in my spirit that this is released, all of the bags that I had been carrying and the baggage I had been carrying of the decisions that I made, because I felt like my dad wasn't there. Like I was saying, anytime that I was in a bad relationship, I felt like all of that spring back to the relationship with my dad, because I was still so hurt and just had so many daddy issues that I didn't know how to address. So I would end up in situations that I didn't really need to be in. And so to address all of those things and just having that weight just literally come off of my chest, like I can't even really explain it. It was like I just wanted to fall out and just lay at God's feet. I just felt so much peace, and it was just very overwhelming because it was such a fear. What I realized is that I had such a fear for years of even attempting to have a relationship with my dad. And I remember telling God, I don't even know where to start. What do I even say? And then what am I even expecting? That was a part of it too. It was like, what am I even expecting? And I remember praying and telling God, even if it doesn't end in a happy ending, because that little girl in me still wants her dad. After all of the pain and the hatred and all of that is gone away, I'm still just a little girl who wants her dad. But I remember talking to God and telling him, even if it doesn't end the way that I have it in my mind, because I don't really know how the relationship is going to go with us just building a relationship. So I remember being like, even if it doesn't end in whatever way, I'm still going to forgive him regardless. Regardless of how it's taken, I am going to forgive him. And I just remember the release of just forgiving him and being able to let all of that go. And a little bit after that, that's when God started talking to me about putting all of this stuff in a book and just combining our poems and just the way that the things that he was writing in jail and some of the poems that I have been writing on my blog over the years, just the way that they merged together is insane.
Oh, wow.
It's literally insane. Like, I can't, you have to get the book to see, but just the way that, okay.
I was going to say, can you give us one treasure, one example?
Say, okay, so, hold on. Because there's a part in the book where I'm kind of talking about that. Let's see, I'm going to find it, y'all. No, it's actually at the front. Because it was, I actually, like, inside the book, I wrote a letter to him, basically forgiving him. And that was a part of me forgiving him was through my writing process. Which, just really goes to show you how important writing is. So I'm trying to find this part where I was talking about how our poems kind of like merge together. Hold on. Okay, here it is, a message, page 83. Okay, so my dad had written a prayer, and so in the page after his prayer, I wrote, I hope you enjoyed the previous poems that were written by my father, Odell Hicks Jr. Healing has a funny way of making everything make sense. While he was writing, the pen found my paper. As he sketched with his hands to create art, I stood in front of blank canvases. In a recent letter he sent me, he said, the bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh, the beat of my heart that thumps inside my chest, faith to faith. I am all over you being me all over again. It's mind blowing that you are going through the exact phases I have been going through all of my life. As a follow up to his words, I decided to enclose some of my own. May the next 14 poems ignite a fire within you to share your gifts with the world.
Wow.
So that's like a message I wrote before we get to my poem. So it's crazy that the words that he was speaking, he wrote that in a letter to me. And the way that he was saying, you know, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And at the same time that he was writing some of his poems, I had been writing, but we didn't even have a relationship with each other. And like I say, he's been an artist like since he was probably in high school, maybe younger. And about 3 years ago, God showed me that I had a gift of making art, acrylic paintings. And I had no idea I can do this. So it's so crazy how I was finding myself, you know, like I mentioned, in front of blank canvases and just really just learning that these are all the gifts that I got from him. But I never was able to even tap into any of this stuff until I started dealing with my relationship with him.
That's so interesting. First of all, the whole importance of forgiveness. We always talk about forgiveness to the point of, you know, forgiveness. People who don't forgive is like, you know, drinking poison, but it goes even deeper than that. You talk about a connection. You also talk about the fact of getting to know your roots and where you come from. And this just furthers my belief that skills and gifts, they are passed down. They're not just something that you pick up and learn. They're passed down, you know, within the family. So had you not gone through this process of forgiveness of your father, you would not have known like all of this stuff about yourself. And right. So in other words, forgiveness also leads you to understanding more about who you are as a person.
Right. Listen, listen. I am just, I don't know what God doing, because like I told you, listen, I was so ready to get to this other book. And the way that he pulled me back and just let me know it's not time for that book yet. And then when I actually went live last week, for like this local thing with authors. And of course I was talking about this book since I had to put the other book on hold. And when I finished, the lady messaged me and she was like, I really need you at the in-person event, because so many people, she was saying that she felt like it was so much deliverance attached to my story. And I'm looking and I'm like, the whole time I was trying so much to rush away from this book. I'm telling you, I felt like this is how I felt. God told me I had to finish this poetry book before I could do Uncovered Through Christ. So I felt like, let me just go ahead and get this out the way and just be done with it. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to really market it a lot. I didn't really want to talk about it a lot. I did a couple of lives like when it first came out, but I didn't really do a lot, you know. And as far as me knowing how I can push a book, I definitely didn't do that at all. And it's crazy how God is coming back around. And even here locally, I've had a few people in person to buy this book. And it's like, it's still a story with this book, even though I didn't want to really talk about it no more, because I felt like the Uncovered Through Christ book, that's the big book. You know, this is just kind of like a preview or a preface to what I'm talking about. And I really wanted to hurry up and get to my story, because I feel like if I don't hurry up and get this out and get this off of my chest, I'm going to just lose it. because like I say, this is where I'm gonna just tell you, you know, I'm gonna just tell you. So this book I'm addressing so much. Like I said, I did a couple of lives on it. So in the Cover Through Christ book, I'm addressing my addiction to pornography. All of these encounters that I had with men and how all of that kind of stemmed with me experiencing what I'm experiencing at that moment. For example, the first chapter, I'm a little girl, and I'm replaying where I was mentally when I was staying at my grandma's house, because we used to always have to stay at my grandma's house because my mom, she went out a lot. And so I'm going through the process of those feelings of rejections that I was feeling. And I think it was 1999, I believe, maybe a little before that. I think I was like 7. So I'm talking about how I'm feeling as this 7-year-old girl, and how I'm feeling with the rejection that I felt like started from my dad, and how my dad didn't want me. And then I go to school and I'm bullied and stuff like that. So I'm actually telling you my life story and how I got up to this point. How did all this affect my relationship with men? So the book is called Childhood Scars, and it really focuses on how those childhood scars affected me as an adult. You know, all of the, like I say, rejection and abandonment issues I still had to deal with. How they played a part in the relationships I was in. You know, where I stayed longer than I knew I should have stayed because I didn't feel like I loved myself, because I didn't feel like my dad loved me. And I was still that broken little girl who was through at grandma's house, you know, because mama was going out, you know. So this is like the whole story is in that book. So that's why I hurry up and get to that book. But what I'm really seeing now, and even us like now having to be pulled off the live, like I'm really understanding that there's such a specific time for that book to come out. And that there's really still a story in this that I have to talk about. Because like you were saying, it's just something with this forgiveness that's going around, and it's a lot of it is forgiving other people, but it really stems from forgiving yourself. And I know that was the hardest thing for me. Okay, after I forgave my dad, then I started beating up on myself about the decisions I made because I didn't forgive him all that time. So then all of the emotions that I had towards him, that was towards me. Like, I'm hating myself. Feeling just all of these things towards myself. And now I have to go through a whole nother process of forgiving myself, you know. And even with my dad, it's like, how can I not forgive my dad when God forgives me every day? I had to go back through that process with myself. How can I not forgive myself when God, you see what I'm saying? Like, that's a disservice to God to have all this hatred towards yourself when he's constantly forgiving you.
Right.
So there was a whole nother process that I had to go through, and that I'm still kind of going through. So I feel like that's why it was such a hold, or why it is being a hold on the other book.
So, I mean, like what I'm getting from this entire conversation is I'm hearing you, but I'm also hearing God talk about the nation and why these stories cannot come out yet, because you're not the first one to say that. Like, even me, like, my thing is, mine is not the childhood trauma, mine is church hurt. So I can't talk about that. I couldn't talk about that until I dealt with forgiveness. But here's the piece to that. The nation has to go through their forgiveness. So God has to take people through by hearing how you forgave, hearing how I forgave, by hearing how this person forgave, and actually learning the process of forgiveness. Because truth be told, people don't really know the process of forgiveness until you actually go through the process of forgiveness.
Because here's the thing. Oh wow, this is good. Like, it's good in my head before I even said it. So this is something that I learned through my process. I had forgiven my dad. However, I had not let go of all of the residue that I still had even after I forgave him. So forgiving him was just the first step. I had to go back and still working on it. I had to go back and individually address every area of my life that unforgiveness touched. So now I have to go and I have to pick it apart. Okay, I forgave him, but I still have rejection residue. I still have to deal with that as an adult, even though I forgave him for not being there all my life. Now I have to go back and I have to deal with the residue of, okay, I forgave my dad, but I still slept with all of these men. So now I have to deal with that. I mean, it's just all of these different levels and all of these different things that I still had to deal with even after I forgave him. So forgiveness in itself is an entire process. It's so much deeper and it's so much more than just saying I forgive you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was, oh my God. I just really feel God right now in this conversation. And it's like I'm picking up on things because it's like I've gone through this process of forgiveness, and I feel like I have gotten to the point of where now I'm helping other people actually get through the process. Matter of fact, I've actually done a whole not a series, but I've actually put a program together on not forgiveness, but life balance. And so one of the biggest things that I talk about is a lot of people feel that their life is not balanced, but that one thing they don't think about is that forgiveness piece. Because what a lot of people do is they go through life with these not blinders, but I call it defense mode. Ever since you were a child, any trauma that you dealt with, because you're a child and you're taught to stay in a child's place, you've had to suppress any type of feeling that you had. You weren't allowed to talk about it. You weren't allowed to express it because, oh, you a crybaby. You are.
Talk about that. Listen, talk about that. Talk about how, like you just said, you have this you're always in defensive mode. So even in the sense of me being a woman, I never knew how to be vulnerable because I had taught myself unconsciously, nobody's never gonna hurt me, even though I'm not addressing these issues with my dad. I remember the time where I wanted to be a player because it was like, you know, no man's ever gonna hurt me. I'm gonna do it first. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
All of that was deep rooted in my childhood scars. All of that was deep rooted. So even the defense mechanism, or what we consider being a strong woman, a strong, especially, all of that was deep rooted in the defense mechanisms that were caused from that same trauma. And like you said, not feeling like you can even open up, you know, to the fact where I've had a very good relationship, but I couldn't even really get out of my own way because it was always, I don't want nobody to see me like that. Or if I was vulnerable and I felt like it wasn't accepted the way I wanted to be accepted, now I'm going back into my shell because now I'm hurt all over again. And even though I'm hurt by this situation with this man, it's still linking back to the same hurt with my dad.
Yes. Absolutely.
It's like, oh my God. It's so insane that you said that.
For forgiveness, it holds so deep, like the deepest. And the reason it holds so deep, like I said, is because we suppress a lot of the things in growing up. We weren't allowed to, because one thing I talk about is journaling. Journaling is important because it gives your feelings words. It gives your feelings a vehicle in order to live your life. So if the words don't have a vehicle to leave, they don't just disappear. They sit there. They sit inside of you. And so as it's sitting there, it's like mold. It starts touching and affecting every little part of your life. And so exactly what you said. So now in my marriage, I'm over here, I got a good dude, but at the same time, he broken too. So we got two broken people. I'm already like, I'm not letting nobody in. And this was because of a, prior relationship
Mm-hmm.
where I would have my heart broken. And so from that point, it was like, I'm not letting nobody else in, but I thought I forgave that person, but I didn't. And so now I'm in a relationship with my husband where I can't even be vulnerable with this man. And
Wow.
it was up until this year that I actually, no, last year when I actually started being really, really vulnerable with him. And we've been married for 8 years.
Wow.
You,
Wow.
so that's how deep that goes. And so if you think about, and then so here's my mind. I go back and think like we're not the first people to go through this because hurt travels from generation to generation, which is how we're hurt. So if you think about
You better preach.
if you think about the way you're raised as a child and you think about your parents hurt and your mother's hurt and you begin to if you are lucky enough to become mature enough to understand your parents hurt, then think about the stuff that they had to go through and the traumas that they went through had to even be quieter. We allow generation. We
Exactly.
we're telling everything.
Because I learned so much about what he had gone through that I didn't know because it was so much from me being a little girl, so now as an adult, now I can understand, some of the things that he went through and why he made some of the decisions that he made, and my mom as well, having to forgive her, like understanding why she made some of the decisions that she made and just where she was at in her life while she was raising us and stuff like that. So that's how we were able to have any type of relationship and I was able to forgive him.
So it sounds like you literally had to forgive in order to move forward, like literally.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I never could finish that Uncovered Through Christ book. Because even though God gave it to me, I used to get so frustrated, like, God, you gave me this book, why I can't finish it? I can sit down and write anything else, but this particular book, I can't finish it. And he started dealing with me on that and let me know you're trying to constantly move forward when you haven't even dealt with your past. So a lot of that, I couldn't finish writing the Uncovered Through Christ book for the longest because there was still stuff with my mom and my dad that I hadn't addressed. And so it's like he made me deal with that stuff. And even being on tour, I remember being on tour with the book that I was in college. And I remember just feeling like, this is the life. Like I'm sitting at tables with celebrities, people I look up to. I'm being invited to private lunches because I'm the president and all of this stuff. And like it was like God literally pulled me back. He's like, you out here, you're doing all of this stuff, but you have this weight on you because you haven't even forgiven. So it's like he shut all of that down and he made me look at it a different way, forgive, and then, take some of that energy and the lessons I learned and put that into my own writing company and my own coaching as well. So when someone comes to me and they want to write a book, they're not just writing a book, like they're dealing with whatever strongholds are holding them back or whatever thoughts that they're dealing with. They're addressing all of those things before they can even write a book.
Wow. This episode was intense, but it was a good intense. I know so many people needed to hear Miss DeLisa Treshelle's story, which is why we invited her on the podcast to share her business story. As you saw, as she was dealing with the unforgiveness between her and her father, she was not able to move forward in her business. So let that be a lesson to you that there are some things in your personal life that can and will affect your business life. That is all we have for you. If you enjoyed Miss Treshelle's story or you want to just send her some love, her information is on the screen if you're watching the visual podcast, and but if you're watching the audio, her information is in the description. Also, if you enjoyed the episode, please feel free to like, share, and follow this podcast, A Business Story. That's all we have for you today. Until next time. Bye.